Okay, my friends, this is it. This is from Lectures Beyond Beyond. This goes back 7 years ago. This is when I wrote my book, and I was screaming about Velikovsky, and a lot of people started talking about it. And it was good for a couple of years, and then it went away. And so I'm coming back at it. Now listen to what they have to say in this interview, and I appreciate using this. Again, it's Lectures Beyond Beyond, and 7 years ago. And this is a book which is Worlds in Collision, which is what I wrote my book about to save his legacy. Now listen to what it has to say here.
14 years ago, in 1950, an amazingly unconventional thinker astounded the scientific community with a theory that challenged many of its most deeply rooted assumptions. In a persuasive bestseller, this man presented a radical view of world history that linked research and hypotheses in such diverse disciplines as astronomy, geology, comparative religion, and archaeology. A storm of protest arose from every corner of the academic world, claiming that the theory was totally wrong. This opposition soon turned into an attempt to suppress the book and discredit the man who wrote it. The man is Immanuel Velikovsky, Russian-born doctor and psychoanalyst, student of the sciences and humanities, founder and one-time editor of the Scripta Universitatis series, out of which grew the Hebrew University in Jerusalem. For the last 25 years, Dr. Velikovsky has been resident in the United States, where he has continued his studies and advanced his theories. His first book was titled Worlds in Collision, and that was followed by Ages in Chaos, Earth in Upheaval, and Oedipus and Akhenaten. Dr. Velikovsky's contention is that in the memory of man, the Earth has gone through great natural paroxysms. He's founded his theory on the ancient records of man from all over the world, on archaeological evidence in the form of ancient calendars that have become strangely obsolete, and on new and radical interpretations of information from astronomy, paleontology, paleomagnetism, and evolution. In addition, Dr. Velikovsky's theory has led him to re-examine prevailing views regarding the origins of religion, as well as those which form the basis of celestial mechanics. And he also calls for a realignment of the chronologies of ancient civilizations. Well, the result of this wide-sweeping theory, as I've said, was a flood of very harsh criticism and ridicule. The scientific community was almost unanimous in rejection of his work. Jacques Barzun, Dean of Graduate Faculties at Columbia University, wrote just recently that the merits of the scientific issue do not alter the deplorable treatment Dr. Velikovsky's ideas received from the profession. The prejudging scorn and closing of ranks against the heretic showed typical guild animus. In recent years, however, evidence collected during the geophysical year and by several space probes has tended to verify several of Velikovsky's predictions. For instance, he had said in the face of strong disagreement that because of her recent birth, Venus is extremely hot, a view subsequently borne out by observations of Mariner 2. He was accused of inventing an interplanetary magnetic field, but one has been detected since then by Pioneer 5. He claimed in 1950 that the ancient civilizations of Central America were much older than believed. Recently, this view, too, has been proved by radiocarbon dating. All in all, a score of Dr. Velikovsky's predictions have been verified, and the opposition within the scientific community has abated. New voices are being heard. For instance, that of Lloyd Motz, professor of astronomy at Columbia University, who, while he still disagrees with Velikovsky, says his predictions should be recognized and his writings should be carefully studied and analyzed because they are the product of an extraordinary and brilliant mind and are based on some of the most concentrated and penetrating scholarship and research of our period. Here with us today on Camera 3 to discuss his theories with Dr. Velikovsky in his first television appearance is Eric Larrabee, an editor and writer whose articles about Dr. Velikovsky were the earliest attempts to make him familiar to a wider audience, and whose latest piece in Harper's Magazine has directed attention to a re-examination of the Velikovsky theories.
Dr. Velikovsky, it's almost 15 years now since you first published Worlds in Collision. And in the years since, you've published 3 other books, Volume 1 of Ages and Chaos, Earth in Upheaval, Oedipus and Akhenaton. And during this period, there has been the curious paradox that although the scientific academic community hasn't by any means accepted what you have to say, that fortune has smiled on you in many respects, in the sense that science itself, point by point, has gone somewhat more in your direction. And also recently that one observes the phenomenon of the younger generation in the colleges and universities being more receptive to new ideas than the older. I was reminded of a quote of Max Planck's, which you know as well, that new ideas in science don't actually become accepted. What happens is that the proponents of the older ideas die off and are replaced.
All right, that's quite true. Okay, this one here is Immanuel Velikovsky, Bonds of the Past, a CBC documentary, from 1972. And it's from Electric Universe Eyes. And now, listen to what it has to say. I'm going to take a couple clips from it. Again, Fair Use Act. I'm not trying to steal anything, but this was from a documentary that's been on the internet for a long time. So listen to this now.
This prediction and confirmation of radio noises from Jupiter convinced Einstein to seek crucial experiments on Velikovsky's ideas. After Einstein's death, his estate wrote letters to this effect, but with no result.
Later on, when I felt, and I know Dr. Velikovsky felt, that a very considerable amount of evidence had piled up, which was very helpful, to put it mildly, to his side. And the resistance of the professional journals to taking all this seriously was still as great as it had been at the start. And I felt also myself a degree of obligation. I wanted to pay my respects to him, and I wanted to pay some of my intellectual debt to him. And so I wrote, and Harper's accepted, the second article, attempting to bring people up to date and give some of the items that had come along.
As late as 1959, the surface temperature of Venus was calculated to be roughly the same as that of the Earth. But in 1962, the Mariner probes to Venus found it to be 800 degrees Fahrenheit. The probes also found hydrocarbons in the atmosphere of Venus. In 1946, Velikovsky had stated these 2 tests, the heat of Venus and the presence of hydrocarbons, to be crucial to his idea that Venus is a newcomer to the solar system.
Now, my line of thought was this. Venus erupted from Jupiter only several thousand years ago. Jupiter, by the way, is 400 times heavier than Venus. And so it was the natal heat, and then the change of motion into heat when Venus, traveling on a extended ellipse, met on its way other celestial bodies, twice meeting the Earth.
All right, I'm going to stop you right here. You can come up and watch this whole thing. I'm just going to clip onto what he's talking about. Venus was literally born, as he said, from the feared god Jupiter, from a literal vagina. I will show you right now. Okay, my friends, we're going to go through what Velikovsky said about Venus and Mars and this terrible, terrible catastrophe that happened. He went through all of the records, through all the cultures on Earth. And he was very, very good at his research. Now, he was a contemporary and a good friend of Einstein's. Now, he presented this research, and it was extremely well received until the academics chimed in and basically destroyed him. And he was still destroyed up till this very day, basically. I wrote a book to try to highlight how important he was after my mud fossil discovery, because everything he said supports exactly what I found. This worldwide catastrophe that created my mud fossils. And now Yale agrees that there was this one worldwide catastrophe, salt waters all over the entire earth, and all of these bodies and creatures were perfectly, exceptionally preserved soft-bodied creatures from a very rapid, heavy saltwater flood with a lot of silicates. And I understand the chemistry why the silicates occurred, because they broke down from the phosphorus down into aluminum silicates, and they coated all my mud fossils with this coating that preserved the insides of them. So Velikovsky research completely supports everything that I have found, and my research support everything that he said, and Yale again supports what I said a year after I told them about it. But at least they're coming on board. Now, listen to what this guy has to say. This goes back sometime probably in the late 70s or somewhere around there, because it just has that feel to it. I don't know how long ago it was, but he's supporting Velikovsky against the academics. He's saying, here's what happened to the poor guy. Now listen to what he has to say.
Velikovsky contends that global catastrophes have occurred throughout the geological history of the Earth, and that these catastrophes have been caused by agents external to the Earth. The most recent catastrophes were caused by Venus and Mars. These agents can be identified through the ancient scientific and literary writings. In 1950, when Velikovsky published Worlds in Collision, it was assumed and widely believed that all of the planets were formed on the order of several billion years ago, all formed at one time. It was also assumed and widely believed that no global catastrophes had occurred on the Earth since its formation. Several review articles appeared in magazines before the book was actually on sale to the public. And from these review articles, it was quite obvious that Velikovsky did not make these assumptions. Hence, he was considered to be incorrect. The assumptions by 1950 had become scientific dogmas, and the astronomers and geologists of the time considered that no amount of proof could disprove these assumptions.
Well, what's happened since 1950? Do the people who objected then still object?
The people that had vested interest in particular theories at that time are still quite violently opposed to Velikovsky. It turns out that nearly every major unexpected find in the space age was expected by Velikovsky and people who had read his works.
And what is the main objection to Velikovsky?
Astronomers usually find out that Velikovsky contends that Venus erupted from the planet Jupiter and assume that that is totally impossible, and hence write off the entire theory. Then if somebody comes up and asks them, what about Velikovsky's work, they say, no, it's totally wrong. And this is one of the main reasons that they give.
What are a couple examples of some...
All right, you see what he just said. One of the main reasons that they think Velikovsky was insane, because he said Jupiter literally gave birth to Venus. Now, that is also in the ancient texts. And Venus took 7 days, apparently, this is what I am led to believe, to approach Earth as a fiery comet, almost the same size of Earth. So its radiation, because it was extremely hot, he called it the natal heat of birth, but it was just spinning backwards, which is also makes it scrub much harder through the substance of the universe. So it's very, very hot. It's still hot today. It's over 800 degrees. But it radiated towards the Earth and cooked, literally cooked the Earth on its way coming down towards the Earth. They said it boiled the rivers, it boiled the waters, it boiled the lakes, and then I have a feeling it may have almost boiled the oceans when it finally impacted our atmosphere. The outside atmosphere of our planet is, let's say, this far off the top. It banged into that atmosphere and glanced off. And when it did, it compressed all of the gases around that envelope of our atmosphere. And that when you get compression of the gases, you get rain. That's what condensation is. It's crushing. It crushed the waters. The oxygen and the hydrogen turned into rain, but it was boiling rain because of the heat. And there was all kinds of hydrocarbons and all that business because, again, I'm going to tell you right now, everything there is I can find is living, is alive now or was alive. I know everybody goes, oh, the guy's crazy. Well, I'm not crazy. Velikovsky wasn't crazy either, and I can prove the things that I'm saying. And he proved the things he said, but it just didn't matter. And the things I'm saying, they don't matter either, because until we get people to start looking, you're going to end up with academic fraud, basically, is what you got now. It's just all it is, boils down to fraud.
The predictions that have come true.
A prediction that actually Velikovsky prefers the word advanced claim was about the temperature of Venus. It was not considered that Venus was as hot as Velikovsky claimed. But by 1962, when the probes went by Venus, it turns out that Venus was extremely hot and much hotter than anyone except Velikovsky had anticipated.
What will happen if Velikovsky is given credit for some of these predictions that have been proved? What effect might all this have?
If people start investigating his works open-mindedly, and hence they will start realizing that there is considerable logic behind what he says, this eventually will require new textbooks in astronomy, history, geology, archaeology, and all related fields.
Well, let's get started. Mud fossils and geology, electron flood theory, Atlantis, draining of the Sahara, giants and myths in history, and Velikovsky, priest of history. This was a paper I wrote. A friend of mine is putting out these little quick books. They're sort of like starter books of my research. So these are all things that I wrote papers on. And he's making a new library. We're going to have a new library, and we're going to do just what he said. We got to change everything. So it would require all new books. Let's get started. Okay, so the exact same thing happened to me that happened to Velikovsky. I was not in the academic realm, so they just pushed me aside, and I finally got upset, and I wrote this book to try to bring Velikovsky back into the foreground. I called it Mud Fossils and Velikovsky and Minds in Collision. He wrote Worlds in Collision. Well, I discovered that minds were the things that was colliding. Worlds did collide, but the minds are colliding like desperately. I put this out in February 2016. I wrote it earlier than that, but it was publication dated February 2016. And then at the end of 2016, Yale put in a paper that exactly said what I said, only they took credit for it and gave me none. So that's the kind of people that we have in Yale and every other university. They're all the same. Now, you can buy this on Amazon. It's only 99 cents. It's no hardcover or anything. It's just you can read it. But it shows a lot of my frustration, I can tell you that. And I had, look at this, I was pretty upset. The discovery of mud fossils a few years ago led on a journey that can only be described as wild and crazy. Evidence uncovered is discussed and many links to videos that prove the claims I made. Now, some things I wasn't right about, I think. As I recall, I made some statements that probably weren't right at that time, and I have revised some things, but not much. And I did start some... I started my own .com site, which was destroyed, and I finally took it down. And everything else I did, I had to undo because of attacks. they just ruined everything that I did. So I basically started over. Well, this is just so frustrating. I'm remembering this now, and it's just gnawing away at me. I had hundreds of samples, eventually completed, scrutinized, many scientifically tested in a variety of ways. DNA tests positive for human DNA, mitochondrial. 3 tests, the contamination ruled out. All negative control tests were in fact negative for contamination. Had 7 CAT scans, showed exquisite vascular bone details in the DNA proven specimens. One 50-foot tall giant, he's actually taller than that. The fingertip and another DNA verified fingertip was from a human giant over 200 feet tall, which I have shown. In addition, there was lots of chemistry lab work. I also recreated the chemical process mudfossilization. It's from nucleophilic substitution and invasion. I'm being ignored when not attacked because reality is still not a concern in academia, and for at least 60 years has been the practice as done with Velikovsky's research. That's academia. It's totally against reality and truth. Mudfossil specimens I present are physical support for Immanuel Velikovsky. I spelled his name wrong. It's an I. Historical masterpiece, 1950. Velikovsky read, studied, and listened. All right. The stories were the same all over the globe about the same events at the same dates, observed by many and recorded by eyewitnesses at that time. We dismiss these recorded historical documents as silly, scary little stories, not at all rooted in reality. Scary stories, yes. Silly, no. Reality, absolutely. Velikovsky was literally attacked, and that will stop right now. I thought I had him. It didn't matter. I had all the evidence just like he did, except I really had physical evidence in my hand. I said, this is going to stop right now. I'm done with this bullshit. And it didn't stop. The academic bullies and book burners are about to be exposed in these pages. Now the fun begins. I wish he was here now. Immanuel Velikovsky, I wish you were here, brother, because sooner or later this thing's going to pop. And this was February 2016. Now, I had been doing this since about 2010 or so. So we're talking 13 years of total dismissal by the academic bullies. And sooner or later it's going to stop. I thought I could get something done, but forget about it. They don't want to know anything. Don't forget, it's only 99 cents. And you can read it. And this was detailing my work. And probably, I can't even remember now. It goes back. I haven't read it again for years and years now. So, anyway, remember that name, Immanuel Velikovsky, spelled with an I, not an E. That was wrong. So, this denial of our reality is only so that they can keep and maintain their status and keep us in the dark about our real past. And our past relates to our future. And what is your future when you die? Well, it's eternity. And what is eternity? I don't know. But I'm going to tell you one thing. All the ancient texts now, I take them not with a grain of salt anymore. I take them with truth. I look at them as, could this possibly be true, considering what I have found? Typhon in the desert, yes. Mars is completely dead now, and it was alive at one time, and I'll show you all of this right now. All right, that's the book that I wrote, and that's the cover of the book. Well, I don't think you get any book. Now, this is all the stuff about Mars and Venus and the collision and where it was born from, and that's where Venus was born from. That, my friends, is exactly identical to a human vagina. Even with the hairline and everything. You see right there? You see that little tab right there? That's the tab that locks body parts into other body parts. And this body part is locked in to the torso. And here's what it looks like if it was a real human. Now, if you don't want to see it, turn away. Where did you go? Here you are. All right, there's that little tab I just showed you. The rest is the rest. There is no difference, none whatsoever. Zero difference. All right, you see anything different there? You see that little tab? That's the thing I was talking about. And this is all that little, basically it looks to me like it's a hairline. Both sides. You see, it comes all the way up here. Alright, and that is exactly the size of Venus. And it is about to give birth again. I'm almost certain of it, because this is very recent. You see this? This was just 2019. That's the big red spot bulging out, just exactly like a cervix would. And then it sloughed all this red scabs and blood came off. All this red came off. Only in a matter of a few days. This was the 5th, 25, 5th, 26th, the 27th, the 29th, the 31st, and 6/1. And then it started to calm down. But that looks to me like it's swelling up, ready to pop a baby out of there. Is that going to happen? It might. There's no saying it won't. This is a great red spot. It did it before. Now, they think this was a big swirling storm. It's not. The planet is spinning this way. And as the clouds come to this mound, Venus Mons, it's a mound. The clouds hit it and they swirl around it. This isn't creating the storm. The clouds are pushing against a mound and they have to swirl around it. That's why it's going there. It's not this creating it. They're trying to get by it. And that's why they swirl. Now, this right here is this right here. That's what happened when Venus was born. And that's exactly what it says. The feared god Jupiter gave birth to Venus, which avenged for Jupiter, was Jupiter's avenger. It came down and wiped out all the giants and all the crazy stuff that was propagated on Earth. He had to wipe it out and get rid of it because it was just insane stuff. And it was just way out of control. And then Venus went around and smashed dead smack into Mars and killed Mars. And where did that happen? Well, here's what happened right there. Boom. I think it hit here and splashed here and scrubbed right across and then left out. And this is as wide as the whole United States. All right, and deep. And that's where it hit it, and it killed Mars at that time. And all the life on Mars that was life and was fossils. Now, NASA Curiosity may have found fossils. Then they shut it down. No more talking about fossils. You want to see the fossils they found on Mars? I'll show you. See that? You say, oh, Roger, that doesn't look like fossils. It looks like little blueberries. Well, that's what they call them, the Mars blueberries. And yes, they are fossils, which I will show you uno momento. What else did they find? They found what they call the Mars Morse code. And that is also fossils from a creature's body. And I will tell you exactly what that is. It's interstitium. What else did they find up there on Mars? Well, they found this, the Mars crab. And they said, well, what is this crab doing there? Well, it's not a crab. Here it is right here. And you see these things right here? What are they doing? All these little blocks and this little stripes going on. There's blocks, block, block, block everywhere and little stripes. What's all this red dust doing everywhere? And why is this thing like this? And then there's another tube right above it. Let's just start with this one. Because this is an artery and a vein. That's the artery, and these are the blood vessels servicing these, which are sarcomeres. A sarcomere is a muscle pincher, and these are the connective tissues that are in sarcomeres, and the red blood has just dusted out of it, dried out and dusted out. That's what all this red does, and that's why it's the red planet, is because it is literally blood. Iron-rich blood. Let's take a look at this again. That's the artery. Again, it's feeding all the tissues, which are sarcomeres. And that's the vein, bringing the blood back to be recharged. Now let's see if we can see sarcomeres, what they actually look like. All right, these are muscle sarcomeres, extremely magnified, but these were giant, 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 giant creatures. These are sarcomeres. They erode right down here, here, and here. And then there's connective tissue, and then there's red stuff. The red stuff just comes out, and all you can see is the connective tissue. But you see it here, here, and all these little stripes. And I think you just saw, I'm sure you did, that is precisely what is right here in these sarcomeres. These are the sarcomeres. They have to be fed with a ton of blood. That's what that does. Now, I have basically the same thing in my shop here, which is a muscle that, here it is right here. This is where all the blood comes out right up here, just like the crab. That's the tube right there. That's the artery. And it creates all this red blood. A lot of this stuff is run out and gone. And the muscle sarcomeres are not all devoid of their redness. But this is the tendon, and that's the muscle. And these would have all the sarcomeres built into them too. But they're just, it's not big enough to see them individually like you can on Mars. So, I have shown you the vagina, the impact, the crab, the sarcomeres. What is this? That is interstitium. What is interstitium? It's the stretchy stuff that pulls on your fabric of your skin and so forth. And when it pulls, it stretches these little straps. These all have straps, but they're normally just all sort of together. And you pull this way, they go. They pull this way, they go. But they all come back to where they're supposed to, like this. This is pinched together skin. This is pull about skin. This is pinched. This is pulled. These are literally sandblasted. There's not enough moisture up there to create like moist runoff. It's just dusted. It's sandblasted. And where there's a higher spot and where they're stretched out like that, the straps erode because they're cheaper than the balls. The balls are the tough ones. So what does it look like in real, in the body? Well, here's what it looks like in the body. These are all those little tiny interstitium balls in the body. That's how many there are, and they're everywhere. And this is what the fabric of interstitium looks like. So this is the Morse code. And some of them are pushed together and some of them are pulled apart. Simple as that. All of the wet stuff that was in here is gone. There's virtually no moisture in here on Mars anymore. Very, very, very little. Although I think they did find some spots where they did find some moisture. But remember the Mars crabs and Mars blueberries? Well, I showed you the Mars crab, and here's the Mars blueberries. Only here, this is in the United States. They're in the Moki marbles in Arizona and Utah. They're all over the place because that has skin too. The skin eroded, turned into mud, and the balls fell. Same as going on in Huntington Beach in the United Kingdom. There's the skin, there's the interstitium. It erodes because it's a floppy, wet sort of stuff, and the balls are not. They stay, and this is what we call mud. It's nothing more than eroded flesh. All right, from this exact situation. That's the white stuff at the top. That's all the red stuff. The balls have fallen. The waves are eating it away, and the balls keep falling. And there they are. That's pretty good sized biology. That is nothing like a human body. You understand? We're talking about gigantic, gigantic, gigantic creatures. And the Earth is covered with them, literally covered with them. I have found them everywhere, everywhere, everywhere. And until people start paying attention, you get the same situation that Velikovsky was in. We're going to walk around in circles for another 100 years. But I don't think it's going to happen this time. I've been too vocal. And people are now starting to take account of this. And I mean, I have the DNA tests, I have CAT scans, I have specimens, I have all of this. It's just undeniable. The only people that can deny it is you got to have a PhD to be able to deny this. And then you don't care what's real. You just want to care about keeping your PhD and getting an award for something. Now, I think I've showed about all you need to see. And this is what's so nonsense about what they say about, look at this, millions of years in one picture. That's a day and a half or 2 days the guy fell over dead. This was a gigantic creature. And you see this white spot right here and this big white tag? This right here is tendon. Tendon is tough as hell. Right here, it would have turned into muscle. This is called an abrupt transition. Over here was where you had a ball of bone or something. and the tendon locks into the bone, and the tendon gives a little bit, and then the muscle pulls all the stuff. So you got bone, tendon, muscle. Tendon stays. That's the only reason this thing's sticking up in the middle of the ocean like that. Why the hell would that be there? Tendon is so tough, it's unbelievable. And you want to see it on my specimen right here? Here it is in my shop. This is identical to what you just saw. There's the white spot right there. There's the big white strip that comes out, the center of the tendon. That tendon right here. You see how it's brown and this is pink? Well, that's got a lot of red blood in it. This one has almost no blood at all. That is just tough as hell. And then this is a real gluey glue that glues it into the bone. And I got another shot showing it with the bone, I believe. Oh, maybe not. Maybe not. Let me go get that. All right, here, this is a better way of looking at it. There's the bone. There's the glue. There's the piece of tendon right there. We're missing, the bone is over here. I didn't pick it up in this shot. This piece here is what we're seeing sticking up out of the ocean. There's the white spot. Carries over to the tendon. I mean to the muscle. The muscle just erodes. It's just cheap. It erodes. That is not. That is tough. And that's why it's still sticking up in the ocean. The bone is also kind of erodes away. Bones did not make it well at all in the Great Flood because it was so heavily salty and hot, and they just disintegrated basically, as far as I can determine. The ones that were, although I do have bones here, hold on. Now here's what can happen to them. They do come out of the body, just like all my organs and everything else come out of the body. Lungs, that's a lung. All right, and it filled in with silicates where the main entrance to the lung is down here. I don't know what kind of animal it was. And this was a bone, and it's pretty obvious. And all of the muscle just eroded away as it basically boiled off. That's all I can determine. And then at the membrane level, you end up with this. Membranes are what they call phospholipids. They're tons of phosphorus. There's where phosphorus is. Now, what is this? This is aluminum silicates. What is this? Aluminum silicates. Phosphorus came down to aluminum silicates in a chemical decay. And this is the same thing. This is all covered with aluminum silicates. This is my buddy Caesar the goose. Caesar Augustus. And here's his feathers. Anything that had to do with collagens, which is fabrics, which is membranes, they seemed to take on this aluminum silicate type of material. And some, it's aluminum silicates with what they call inclusions. So it's basically every one of them, 100% of feldspars, 100%. And that's all my stuff is coated with feldspar. And every feldspar is aluminum silicates. And then there's other things in with it, different types of transition metals and so forth. So this, that's what was sticking up out of the ocean. So we're not talking 150 million years, my friends. There's a lot that needs to be reconsidered here, a lot. Here's a chunk of muscle somewhere out west. There's a vein, and that's the weave of the connective tissue. The red stuff has eroded away like it did up on Mars, only here it erodes away because of moisture. Up there it dusts, and the dust comes down. And the same thing with the interstitium with the Morse code. It's like sandblasted. Here we have a lot of erosion because we've got water. Okay, my friends, so this is the Immanuel Velikovsky archive, and this is in the beginning, and it goes through the early ages, the Hebrew cosmology, planet ages, and all this business. Then part 2 is Saturn and the flood, which is what we're talking about, the deluge and all that stuff, the deluge and the comet. We're going to go through all of this stuff, Jupiter, the thunderbolt, Mercury and memory, and all of these things Velikovsky wrote about because of the research he did discovering the ancient texts. And that's exactly what I did discovering the ancient texts. My research is basically the same as his, only he went around the world digging into the archives and all of these things that were written in the museums and libraries and all that stuff. Now I don't have to do that. I can do it online. So And I have all the sources, and I have all his sources. And I have literally hundreds of people now that I work with around the entire world. I have people almost in every country in the world now that have seen my research and are interested and relating it to their own backyards. The people in Africa, they're freaking out, especially in Ethiopia. Oh my God, that place is just unbelievable. And the whole Fertile Crescent, all the Euphrates and Tigris, all that area, I understand it all now. And it's all biology, 100% biology. And this is, well, let me just show you what Jesus Christ said. I'm going to leave it at that. Because to me, what does this mean? What does all this mean? So what? So what Venus was born from Jupiter? So what it almost hit the Earth? That was a long time ago. Who cares about that? Well, I care about it, and because I care about it, because it talks about what's going to happen to you in the future. What happens to you after you die? I'm going to tell you right now, I'm getting quite a long ways into this event, and it's going just like that. All right, so very soon I will have to meet my maker. Now, what will I say? I didn't care? I didn't care. Who cares about that stuff? Well, if you're going to buy into academia that you're just going to turn into a pile of goo, and then somebody's going to dump you in the ground somewhere or burn you up, and that's it, your case is closed, well, then who cares? You're right. This stuff means nothing. Absolutely nothing. It's just a big flash in the pan. Wow, look at that stuff. Look at giants. Look at dragons. Woo-hoo. Well, there is that. And Jesus said that too. He said, you'll marvel and you will be disturbed. And then you will realize that the earth is a corpse and a body. Let me just show you that, because that's exactly what he said. And he said, do not stop searching. Don't stop. Don't stop searching or you die. Now, these are the Gnostic texts. Gnostic was Greek, basically, knowing, to know things. Now, this was written by Doubting Thomas, who was Jesus' scribe while he was alive. He walked around, he wrote down the things he said. He says these are secret sayings where the living, breathing Jesus spoke with Doubting Thomas, who wrote these things down. The first one, it says, and he said, whoever finds the interpretation of these sayings will not experience death. Now, I'm going to tell you right now, if you can figure all these things out, God bless you, because yikes, I can't. I'm working on it, but I'm going to tell you. Then the second thing he said, Jesus said, let him who seeks continue seeking till he finds. When he finds, he will become troubled. When he becomes troubled, he will be astonished, and he will rule over all. All right, now, you will be astonished. If you pay attention, you damn sure going to be astonished. Now, 56 and 80 tells it all. 56. Jesus said, whoever has come to understand the world has found only a corpse. It's a corpse, and whoever has found a corpse is superior to the world. So if you find it too, you are superior to the world, and maybe God will say, hey, you paid attention. Come on up. Jesus said, he who has recognized the world has found the body. And you have to know the body, all the parts of the body, so you have to be able to recognize the world. And he who has found the body is superior to the world. So I would say, if you don't want to taste death, maybe you should start looking into things a little deeper, because it's, to me, there's a lot more going on here than just a splash of, wow, this is spectacular. Oh, this is amazing. Well, yes, absolutely. 100%. But I think it's got a lot more meaning than that, my friends. A lot more. All right, if you don't know what eternity is, endless life after death. Now, the way I understand it is once you're here literally forever. Now, there's a lot of ways for you to go. You're not an immortal like a god where you just never die. We die and then we ascend or descend. Now, your obligation to God is to ascend and become more righteous and more compassionate, more loving, more intelligent, basically, than when you got here in the first place. If you just see this as a place to party, that's what the Satan and the rest of those guys did. They just saw it as a place to party. And it didn't work out too good for them. So I'm thinking to myself, I would like to have a nice, endless death that was in a place where people were nice. And they didn't go around shooting people and killing people and taking advantage of people and using other people. And that's what's happening now. And it was all written about. It was all written about. And it really points to the teachers. It said in those days there were false prophets. So they used religion to dictate to the citizenry how you have to do, and you have to bring money to us every week, and you have to do this, and you have to do that. They used it. They were the false prophets. Now, then it says, well, let me just read to you what it says. All right, here's exactly what it says. This is 2 Peter 2.2. But there were false prophets among the people, even as there shall be false teachers among you, professors. Privily shall bring in damnable heresy. There's no God, there's no Jesus. Don't ever speak about that in our Ivy halls. Even denying the Lord that bought them, who is Jesus, bought him with his life. He came down, he said, you follow me, I'll give up my life to show you how important it is to be compassionate and loving, and then you follow me or just get lost. And most of them are going to be getting lost. They're denying the Lord and bringing upon themselves swift destruction. Their lives can be as happy as they want. They can drink all the champagne they want, get all the awards they want, and wear their little hats and robes and so forth. But I'm going to tell you right now, when they meet their Maker, they're in trouble. It says, many shall follow their pernicious ways, by reason of whom the way of truth shall be evilly spoken of. They attack people that speak truth. They don't want truth. Those are the people that are your professors right now. Those are the people that are running the academic societies and scholars. They don't want the truth. You come with that, they will destroy you. Just like they did Velikovsky, just like they did me. But I don't care, because I'm not in that realm, and I couldn't care less about those people. And if you kneel down to them, good luck to you. This just came out a few minutes ago. Groundbreaking study shakes up established views on mountain formation. Well, mine sure does.